Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the A24 New Wave podcast. So, my name is Aaron West, and this is the accompaniment podcast to my book, or maybe I should say the accompanying. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But we have a lot of episodes to talk about it. So, first off, as you can see, well, if you're watching on video, you can see me with my hat on and a little bit of scruff. I'm growing my hair out to be more like academic. So, hopefully, the hat will only be with me maybe a month or two longer and yeah, then I'll look a little more presentable and a little more hip, maybe. I don't know. It'll take a lot to make me look hip, but yeah, I'm writing a book, and for this first episode, I figured I'd just talk you through it. So we have a Kickstarter campaign going on right now, and it's not easy to podcast by yourself. So I'll pretend that this book is my partner. So yeah, if you are hearing this, please, you can probably get a lot of it from audio, but the video will be in the comments here or the show notes if you want to watch the video, because I am going to be scrolling through the book and talking about the book. And also talking about the podcast. But first off, this is a book that it says from Aaron West and Jill Blake. Jill Blake, of course, as most people who know me, is my partner in crime. She is my co-owner of Sin Journeys, and she is technically the editor of the book. And in fact, I'm going to scroll to the very bottom of the Kickstarter, or actually, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that fast scroll. I'm going to scroll over to the FAQ. Who is Jill and why is she on the cover? So, and I say here, most nonfiction books do not feature an editor on the cover, but Jill is more than an editor. Talk about her work, her involvement here at Sin Journeys, and also how we work together. And Jill is very much a part of this story and collaborating to make this a really, really good book. So she's more than an editor. She will tell me, and she can tell me if something is terrible, and she will. But that's a joke. She'll give developmental advice, uh, say, hey, maybe this needs to be broken up and this needs to go here. Maybe you should talk about this film or this filmmaker here, or hey, how about this film movement that you didn't mention? So yeah, as you can see here, just on the Kickstarter, we have 1320 pledged of 3,000 with 44 days to go. So we are very much on pace to meet our goal and then some, and that's a good thing. 28 backers. That's we would like more, but we're getting a good bit of bang for our backers' buck. So thank you very much for the contributions of the U28. Now it is really expensive to make a book. So this is the cover you're seeing right now. This is actually a video, but without that, it is just the cover. And in fact, I'll scroll down. You can see the cover here. This, of course, does not have the title, which would be at the top. So obviously, this image is an homage to Moonlight, and so this is the front right cover right here on the right half, and it will say the A24 New Wave by Aaron West, edited by Jill Blake, and her name will be on the cover. Then there'll be binding here. In fact, I might post an image that shows the actual binding, and so you can kind of envision what it'll look like as a book cover. This is actually designed towards the specs of how to print the book, so it's very important. The shape is very important. So yeah, as I said here, we have this awesome book, and we want to get it into your hands. So that involves designing the book, which is not just the cover, but also inside the cover, and hopefully I'll get to talk with the gentleman that is doing the layout for the cover. He's awesome, and in fact, he is responsible for a couple graphics below this. Big thing, if you do support us, we can't stress this enough. You will not be asked a shipping fee because that is, well, we don't want to overcharge you actually mostly, but we also don't want to undercharge. I think a lot of when I back Kickstarters, and by the way, I backed 73, as you can see, so I'm very well versed. It's my turn, my turn to do the Kickstarter. Oh, here, this image has the binding, so you get an idea what this will look like. So you can see that just how that came to life. But I sometimes you spend 15, $20 for shipping, and when we buy things, sell things, so that feels like a lot, and I just don't want to overcharge people. But if I undercharge, if it really is 15, $20 for a lot of items, then I don't want to be paying for that out of my own pocket. That defeats the purpose of crowdfunding. So yes, this is by Caitlin Kuwald. I could not give her enough credit, and hopefully she'll be on here to talk about this as well. But Caitlin did an amazing job on the cover. She worked quickly too. And we had this sketch a couple weeks ago, and this is not easy. This is a full color illustration. This is not AI. In fact, this is an example of why AI is not really viable for a project like this. It would just look grotesque. Um, I could try it. I don't even want to. It would just look too ugly. So Caitlin is amazing. If you haven't seen her work, she designed our Cine Journeys website. So that's a big thing. But she's designed lots of covers for Blu-rays. She's just a really tremendous illustrator. This is actually what Carl worked on. These images here. So hopefully we'll talk to Carl. And this is what you get when you support. You'll get actually the accompanying podcast episodes. That's what I'm recording right here. Interviews with people involved. The goal is that as I talk to people for this book, say I since Moonlight, say Barry Jenkins. We'll probably talk for, I would guess, an hour, hopefully, if he has that much time. And hopefully, I would have about 10 minutes or maybe 20 or 30, depends on him, because I know Barry Jenkins loves to talk, and he and I have a lot of similar tastes. I could imagine we could talk for hours, but he probably doesn't have that much time. But when we have interviews for the book, we would like to get them on the podcast, and then we'll occasionally put out episodes with people that just friends, academics. We talk to critics regularly, so would love to get their input on actually A24 New Wave, which is a premise that not everybody will agree with, and that's fine. In the book, I do make the argument that we are in a new wave movement, and I do compare um, the current movement to prior movements. They're listed here: French New Wave, American New Wave, the indie movement of the 90s, and actually, I would say the other indie movements of the 2000s. A lot of people would call some of those mumblecore, and I do talk about that at length in the book. People don't like that word. The filmmakers don't like that word, but it's kind of had to be accepted. So there is going to be a little bit about mumblecore. Here, the big thing is we're talking about the filmmakers. A24, how it began, how it went, how it's going. Covers the history of A24 project by project, award by award, auteur by auteur. And I'm just going to go down to the table of contents. Yeah, and the big thing is award season right now. And Anora and The Brutalist are candidates for major awards. We'll see. There's a lot of films out, but there are a lot of A24 films in the mix now. Anora is not an A24 film. It was distributed by Neon, but Sean Baker has been with A24 uh, for the Florida Project and for Red Rocket, and he is very much a fan of uh, probably The Brutalist. Actually, he's probably a big fan of that. He loves movies. I've had the luxury of interviewing him twice previously, and hopefully I will again for this project. Here is the May Queen. We are going to be having some designs. Actually, Caitlin is working on the May Queen right now, so that will be available. Shirt, totes, art prints. I will actually. You can see behind me. I have a Van Gogh print. I think the May Queen might replace that once I fulfilled my own order. So we do have stretch goals coming. This is the big thing. Another book. I'm writing two books at once. I can't really talk about that much at all, but I will at some point. That will be when we meet our goal and when we need to get to stretch goals to fund that other book, because it is expensive to put one book out. It's even more expensive to put two. But our hope is that we can at least put it out digitally or online. So and that's where the Cine Journeys website access people pledgers get access at a discount. We'll also have we have instructors, we have online classes. This is a great group of people. We already have Derek is teaching Japanese New Wave, and Imogen is teaching Palin Pressburger, and then we have others that are coming on, and they will be launching their topics very soon. So let me go to the table of contents. This is a very, very tentative table of contents. So forward, means somebody else will write it, special guest. I have a couple ideas in mind of who I want to write the forward, and probably anybody that knows me could probably guess. But it really depends on who has something to say, who's willing to do it. That is a big deal. Uh, Also, somebody's opinion of the book itself. So then there's the prologue. I will talk about, or I say will, I have talked about it. Most of the stuff is already written. I talk about really what prompted me to watch this. So the very, very first words in the book you'll see are about me going to the theaters and having an experience. And it hit me that we are in a new wave movement because I saw other filmmakers in modern mainstream works and including their own, some of their artistic work. So some of them have been through with A24. And then I go into an origin story. So this is kind of the beginning of the history that they formed in 2012. I'll tell you right now, A24 is named after a sign in Italy. A lot of people know that, but maybe not everybody. But they came from from the industry, we'll say. They came from different independent labels. They had been in the business, and they there was some funding from Guggenheim. So if people know the museum or the family, there is some funding there, and yeah, there was more of that later, which I'm not going to get ahead of myself. So we start out with the Spring Breakers. So if you know Harmony Korine, he's quite an artist. I think he's amazing, but I really enjoyed writing this chapter. Now, part of this is there's a little bit of a joke in that I shouldn't say a joke, but the reality is A24 gets people in theaters to watch artistic films, and sometimes that doesn't go well. So, in this chapter, The Witch, I actually quoted my mother-in-law who called this the worst movie in the world or she'd ever seen. And that's because The Witch is not for my mother-in-law. And that is no offense to her. She's a amazing woman, but she is not the target audience. So she got fooled. And I don't think that it's in A24's business model to fool people into seeing art house movies. They are just trying to get their movies out to as wide an audience as possible. And they have actually exposed a lot of people to art house cinema, indie cinema, through these practices. So a lot of these films here, maybe not as many in the beginning, although Spring Break did make money and earn box office. So just scrolling down, we have Denis Villeneuve, we have Jonathan Glazer. Jenny Slate is a stand-up comedian. So I talk about auteur, and if you don't know what auteur means, that just means basically an author of cinema. So oftentimes it's the auteur theory, and they call the director the author usually. And in fact, everybody here but Jenny Slate are directors. Now, it's a bit of a stretch to call Jenny Slate an auteur because she is a comedian, she's a writer, she's a voice actor, she's very, very funny, and she does great voice work. She's done it on a lot of TV shows, Bob's Burgers, that sort of thing. But she starred in Obvious Child, and she helped make the movie Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. So that was a really fun chapter to write. Now, again, I had to make the argument. I say argument. It's not like I'm that persuasive, but I'm kind of lumping Jenny Slate in with auteurs because it literally is her voice in the movies. Now, of course, it takes a village. There are a lot of people behind these films, so don't ever want to minimize that. If you could think of it, auteurs, directors, they have their vision, but they're also kind of like managers. So I try to highlight the others on the production as much as possible, especially writers. So of course, Tusk. I was just talking to somebody earlier that was surprised that Tusk was out on A24. This was a fun chapter to write. I loved this one. This is a bonkers movie, but it was very, very huge for A24. So speaking of writers, Alex Garland is really a writer director. There's a lot of that. The people that write their own material and direct it. Robert Eggers as well. Robert Eggers is very meticulous. He had been a production designer before, and then he was the perfect fit for a director because he's so meticulous with where he wants everything. He wants everything to be period appropriate. In fact, if you listen to an interview or watch a commentary with him, he's very critical of himself. I can tell he's a perfectionist, and I would love to talk to him. Same with Alex Garland. So Ex Machina is a big film, but you've probably seen other Annihilation was not an A24, but that was a big movie for him. Men was a A24 and was a very controversial movie, to say the least. I don't know that many people saw it, but interesting to say the least. Then last year's Civil War was a big movie and one of the biggest box office movies for A24. Now that one was controversial. Most likely, Garland will be divided into early and late because he has yet another movie coming out. So that's the one thing about A24 in this book. They're not stopping. They put out 15 movies, or I think 16 movies. So then here, the first awards year, this is really 2016, and this is when Room became a big award sensation, and other films too. But Room won their first Oscar. Well, Room and Amy, I guess Amy technically because it was earlier in the show, was their first Oscar. Actually, Ex Machina won Best Cinematography as well. And then Krisha, if you see the beginning of the Kickstarter, I mentioned that Trey Edward Schultz, he wrote or he funded this film when he was a film student through Kickstarter, and it was great to find that because there's a lot of commonality. And I'll be honest, he was not somebody I was going to write a chapter about initially. In fact, there are other filmmakers that have been made A24 films that are not part of the book, but I'll probably write chapters for that'll be for online or update access. That just because of the confines of printing a book, you don't want it to do we don't want to make an 800-page tome. First off, shipping would just be massive out of the gate. But he's really interesting. He's very young too. I want to say he's 38 now, so his story will be very fascinating. Speaking of fascinating, Yorgos Lanthimos. So again, somebody who has graduated at A24. He has two films at A24. So when I say I'm covering The Lobster, I'm actually covering The Lobster, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and I'm going to get to Poor Things, which is really his last, maybe Kinds of Kindness, even though that's not A24. Probably not Kinds of Kindness. It'll probably stop right before Poor Things. Kind of like Villeneuve, I actually stopped before Dune because this is not the book to read about Dune. So, of course, Moonlight, Barry Jenkins, and this will be their first Best Picture. So if spoiler alert, Moonlight won Best Picture. It was quite an event. And so that is actually a big chapter, and that will actually cover the Oscars for that year. Then we have early horror. Now, as I mentioned, Tusk is arguably the first horror film. Some people actually will say it was Under the Skin, which is here, Jonathan Glazer. This is a good chapter too. I really enjoyed writing that. The thing about A24 is often they get thought of as horror distributors, but as you can see down here, Lady Bird and their Florida Project, those are not horror films, and they kind of found their footing. So as I mentioned, there's mumblecore. There's also something called mumblegore that goes into those early A24 horrors. And there's a big dividing line. It's really here with Ari Aster, and Hereditary is highly recommended. But there's also Midsummer, and of course, Beau is Afraid, which was very divisive, which is the case for a lot of these. Good Time, the Safdie brothers. There's also Uncut Gems. David Lowery, The Green Knight. And I'm forgetting. Oh, Ghost Story is a big one of his, the first one of his. And Daniels, the directing duo that did Everything Everywhere All at Once. So that is the second Best Picture and counting for A24. And their first film with A24 was Swiss Army Man. Then we get to late A24. So here is Ty West and the X Trilogy. We get to Darren Aronofsky. Now, he is really retrofitted into A24 with the movie Pi. And so far, they have delved into, I guess I'd say, film history, other auteurs. So in the A24 documentaries, there's also a Talking Heads release of Stop Making Sense, which A24 did distribute theatrically and also on Blu-ray. I think maybe even 4K. I can't remember. Same with Pi. Pi was 1998, 1999, I think. I think it was 1998. But the thing is, Darren Aronofsky really feels like an A24 kind of director, somebody that influenced all of these people. And so I will I'll write a chapter about him. I haven't written that one yet, but it'll focus around Pi because that's an early work for him. And I'll talk about, his other films and how they influence all these auteurs. Just kind of finishing up here, representation. So a big thing about A24 is, and I don't know if this is part of their mission statement or if this is intentional, but they are very good about getting a lot of different voices on the screen. So lots of representation from male, female, gender, sexuality, politics. I shouldn't say politics. There is some politics, but race is a big one. Even immigration. It's not just black white. So, for example, Minari is an immigration story of an Asian family, and there's a lot of that. And the one thing is that I don't want to tokenize these groups. So I will talk about the representation. I can't talk about every single film they've released. It's a long list, and it would be a long book. But I'm going to talk a good bit about how they've represented different voices in this chapter. Then late A24 horror, there's a lot of films here. In fact, there's going to be some overlap because A24 and the filmmakers that they work with, they use horror often as a way to explain representation and what the world looks like. Sometimes it's very scary. So sometimes the art horror, kind of manifests as a representative portrait of somebody and how and their lived experience. So finally, the A24 New Wave. It's a little bit ambitious to say that A24 is responsible solely for a new wave movement. I mean, it's really the credit goes to the filmmakers, but there is a type. So a lot of people will say, I want to make an A24 type film. So there are a lot of films that are parallel to A24. Of course, I'm thinking of Coralie Farget, or Farget. There's a little bit of T at the end. I struggle with her pronunciation. But this year, she's has a Oscar buzz for The Substance, and she also made Revenge, and there's others like her, Julie Ducournau as well with Titan, Raw. Those feel like A24. So I'll kind of talk about some of the films that seem like A24 and may have been inspired by some of the films of A24. In fact, Julie Ducournau is making a film with A24. I believe it's in production right now. I'm not certain. And then finally, wrapping up, so A24 has gotten into TV. Beef was a huge hit for them, won them a lot of awards. A24 has also gotten into comedy. And then the epilogue, a little play on words here, 2824. That's because 2024 is a big year for them, and we'll see how that pans out in terms of awards. But that's going to end the book. And the risks and challenges are, I want to be transparent with these. They are that with it's tough to stay up to date. A24 is going to keep putting out films. In fact, even this year, I'm seeing the films that are going to be released. So I know that the day that this hits print, it's going to be outdated. So we actually have a digital access option. So we'll keep on updating the book, and we'll probably put out reprints maybe every couple of years or so. But this Kickstarter, it really will allow us to continue with updates outside of the printed book. And this podcast, our website, you'll be able to hear and read about some of these different projects. So that's it for the first episode of the A24 New Wave. So 23 minutes by myself, that's not bad. So I'm going to say goodbye. The link to the campaign is in the show notes. So please support us. We literally can't do it without you. And even though we have a 3,000 goal, it costs a lot more than that to make this book. So thanks again, and I appreciate you going on this journey with us.